Young people today are struggling with their identity.
I am a white, transmasculine, femme, non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied.
I'm a dog boy and I'm part of the Ken and Mimi community.
Your kitty looks like a flat tire. Today's pronoun of the day is shroomy shroomies. These pronouns are inspired by my new tattoo named Shroomy.
So how do we raise a child who knows who they are and are free to just move forward and build a meaningful life? That's what we're going to tackle in today's video. We're going to talk about how we can prevent our children from falling into dangerous, esoteric, weird, cultish identity traps that can distort their self-view and actually prevent them from leading a meaningful life. We're going to talk about how to equip your child with confidence and resilience to navigate the complex world of today's identity crisis. And of course, because we're here at hifam, we're going to talk about how to build a strong family culture that offers your child everything they could possibly need when it comes to their identity. Now, before I say everything that I think might be wrong with these trends and how we can protect our children from them, I do just want to steel man them for one moment, because I do think that there's something positive about this opportunity for individual expression that Gen Z has. This idea that I don't have to be defined externally by being a nerd or being a jock or being one of the cheerleaders or the popular girls or any of that, but rather I get to be hyper individualistic. I get to craft and customize and tailor all of the labels that I want to identify with, and everybody else has to respect that. There is something a little bit narcissistic about it. There is something a little bit controlling about it and contrived and also just a bit odd. But there's also something that points to the fact that we are all individuals, that we are all different, and that we are all built up of varying layers of identity, whether it's the aesthetics that we present or the values that we hold or the lifestyle we have or our backstory. And so I think it touches on a kernel of truth, and I think there's something positive about hyper-individualism, but I do also think that this cultural trend takes it to an extreme that is really overall unhealthy for our children. Let's talk about why. As you're about to see, today's endless labels like cottagecore, dark academia, e-girl, gender fluid can overwhelm and really confuse young minds. Instead of a clear path to live a fulfilling life, children today are faced with a barrage of fleeting trends and echo chambers online. Sometimes it's all just in good fun, like in the days of the hippies or the punks or the goths. It's just an affiliation with a vibe, with an aesthetic, with certain music or a certain look. But often these labels can lead children to join or identify with harmful groups, with misdiagnosis, or to promote narrow cult-like behaviors. Without our strong guidance, children today really risk developing identities that isolate them socially and that limit their true potential or even lead to drastic self-harm. Gen Z's identity crisis boils down to this: the endless stream of customizable transient labels in digital culture fragments a coherent sense of self, leaving many without a stable foundation for meaningful connection and belonging. So you might say to me, yes, but Avital, back in the day, we had the jocks and the nerds and the cool girls and the popular kids, and we had the hippies and the punks and the goths, and we also had labels and subculture groups. And that is true. But the big difference that today's youth face is that identities today are fluid. They are self-curated. They are constantly evolving through online communities. Whereas in the 80s, the labels that were put on people were generally put on them by external forces. Other people in their class labeled them as a nerd or as a jock. And it was based on a fixed set of externally observable criteria, like someone who plays sport or someone who plays video games. Now, those might have been restrictive, they might have been unfair, they might have caused limited social mobility between the groups, and they might have boxed kids in with unfair labels. But today, there are endless labels. Today, they are self-identified. Today, they divide and segregate our children into smaller and smaller online communities with more and more niched down definitions, hyper-specific, and create a sense of disconnect from anyone who doesn't hold that same identity. If you're blissfully living under a rock and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let's dive in together.
Aren't Z-hers. I am a white, transmasculine, femme, non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, culturally Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, gray demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex.
Okay, so this is Cody. Cody has special neo-pronouns. This goes beyond the regular pronouns that people choose, but now they are making up their own pronouns to match the specific subcategory of identity that they identify with. And to make matters more complex, these neo-pronouns might change as the day goes on. And we'll see how we get into this further, how that becomes very fluid. Cody is identifying themselves through these ideas of diagnoses. Various medical diagnoses are listed here. Various gender identities are listed here. Various sexual orientations are listed here. And through something that isn't new, but has become yet another very specified subcategory of aesthetics or vibes. Let's keep going.
Ever since I've been going on this loafing journey, like, just unlocked something within me, because every time I go to loaf in public, like, I enter like my fursona, like an alter fursona, and like, I don't know, I just feel so whole when I do it. Like something about like being a cat just genuinely like resonates with me. I'm being so serious though, guys. Like for the longest time too, I've always like meowed at my coworkers. Like unironically, I just meowed at them. And like ever since I started loafing, like I don't know, it's just genuinely brought me so much like inner peace. I don't know, like I just identify so strongly with like being a cat. Like I'm not even joking, guys. Like I don't know, like was I a cat in my past life or something? But like,
separate note, can we teach our kids not to say like every minute? Like,
no, it's just genuinely brought me so much like contentment within my soul. Like I don't know, but every time I like get into my like cat persona, I just feel like so whole. Like I feel such like a oneness in the universe. Like I'm not even joking, guys. Like I'm not really familiar with like the furry community and all the terms, so like I don't really know, but like I don't know if I'm like all with the whole fursuit thing, but like just the whole essence of being a cat, like that genuinely like speaks to me. Like I'm being so serious, guys. Like,
and if you're thinking this is a joke, I totally believe her that she is being serious. Now, I just need to explain what loafing is, because I didn't know. I had to look it up. It's to idle one's time away, typically by aimlessly wandering or loitering, to lounge, to loll, to laze, to spend time doing nothing. So this is some life advice from Gen Z, is that you should do more loafing. And as you do more loafing, you will come up with your identity and you will connect with your inner essence, like your cat self, your fursona, your fur self. And then you can start to think about these subcategories. Where do you fit in the best? Because you might have heard of the rather extreme and shocking idea of kids identifying as an animal and showing up to school as an animal, as a cat. Typically cats, but there are many other animals to choose from. But you might not realize that within that already seems very fringe and very rare, although it's becoming increasingly common. Within that, you will find subcategories. Take a look.
Were you one of the people who watched Sweet Tooth and thought hybrids were really sick, and you kind of wish you had animal ears and a tail, but not in a Therian or a furry way? Well, I've got some really good news, because there's a whole entire community made for you. I'll introduce myself. Hi, my name's Beck, and I'm a dog boy, and I'm part of the Kenemimi community, which basically is it's based off of anime, basically, and it translates to animal ears. So it's the aesthetic way of wearing ears and a tail and other like animalistic accessories in an aesthetic way. I love how ears and tails look on me, and that's why I do it. A lot of people assume that when people wear ears and a tail, it's about Therians or it's about furries, but actually, it's not. It can be an aesthetic thing, and loads of people do it. There's a whole entire community, and a lot of people don't know about this. We are literally like hybrids. We are hybrids. We are hybrids from Sweet Tooth. One thing I'm going to mention before it even gets onto that, this is completely safe for work. This is literally just for the aesthetic of the ears and the silly little tail.
So it's safe for work. It's just the aesthetic. We are literally hybrids. This is a very sweet dog boy, and I wish him no ill. But I am confused by this desire of Gen Z to find this very niched down, very specific, ultra defined categorization. It's almost a bit of an obsessive compulsive impulse to categorize every aesthetic and then belong solely within that category. So within furries, you have the Kemonomimis, and the Therians and the furries, and they're all different because some of them actually think they are a cat or identify as a cat, but some of them just like the aesthetic of ears and a tail, and some of them, I don't know what else they do. Let's discover.
I put the packet on the glass. What glass? The little glass dish in the microwave. Got it. I closed the door. Which door? The door to the microwave. What is wrong with you?
So it's interesting because many of Gen Z's identities are based on sexuality. They're based on kinks, on fetishes, on gender identity, on sexual orientations and preferences. But if you were ever to suggest that, as in this case, she's saying she's a kemonomimi, but don't suggest that it's a kink because that would suggest there's something wrong with you. Okay, got it. Meanwhile, of course, she's fawning and, kind of displaying herself and wagging her tail in, I think, a rather suggestive way to the camera. So there's obviously something in these aesthetics that is supposed to, trigger some kind of attraction or interest or intrigue in the aesthetic. And sometimes it is a sexual one.
I put the packet on the glass. What glass? The little glass dish in the microwave. Got it. I closed the door. Which door? The door to the microwave. What is wrong with you?
Many of these creators are just lip syncing songs and showing off their bodies and moving in very sensual ways. But if you suggest that they should purr for you because you're a cat or, that it's a kink, then they get very upset and outraged. And that's something that I've noticed in watching this hellhole that is Gen Z TikTok, is that there's a lot of outrage and indignation, righteous indignation around correct categorization, right? If you use the wrong pronoun, if you use the wrong neopronoun, if you assume the wrong identity, if you don't know the difference between Therians, kemonomimis, or furries, then you are bigoted. Then you aren't respecting their identity. Their identity, their list of labels that they attach themselves to is the most important thing about them. And being ignorant of that or not understanding if one is a kink and one isn't a kink, or not understanding that it's just an aesthetic and it's not an identity, these are the types of things that are going to get you in big trouble with these individuals. Let's keep going.
Fired. You're fired. You're washed up. You're retired. Your kitty looks like a flat tire. Ew. I bet that your kitty real tired.
Perfect.
Okay, case in point, how I wag my tail. Someone's going to tell me this isn't suggestive. But it goes beyond that. This subcategorization means that I can make up new identities, that the intersection of all my different identities becomes how I am unique, how I am special, how I am valued. So I might need to come up with my own pronouns, for example.
Today I'm going to show you how to use ze-zer pronouns in sentences, so let's go! A good little tip to help you remember ze-zer pronouns is to replace the S of she, her with X for ze-zer. So I really hope that's helpful. Z is such a wonderful person. Zer's smile is so contagious. In fact, I saw Zer make a whole audience smile. I think Z should be very proud of Zer's self. Today's pronoun of the day is shroomy shroomies. These pronouns are inspired by my new tattoo named Shroomy. Shroomy uses Shroomy Shroomies pronouns. So this means that Shroomy uses name self pronouns. Go Shroomy. And that's too fun. I would even say it's stupid fun. I love naming things that are important to me. And these neopronouns are just too dang cool not to use. So that's my explanation and Shroomy's explanation. So yeah, now let's get to the sentences. Shroomy's dream is to live in a world where we can all live in peace, benefiting not only Shroomy self, but everyone around Shroomy. Only then will Shroomy feel relief. And just so you know, Shroomy definitely fights for equal rights. Shroomy is just all about making the world a better place. So let's follow Shroomy. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so silly, but so fun. And on this channel, we believe that no being is free until we are all free. And
I know some of these might hit as satire to you, but I've sat through enough of these and read through their comments to tell you that they're not. They're taking this entirely seriously. In fact, this creator has an entire TikTok that is dedicated to teaching you how to use all sorts of neopronouns, how to use me, me's pronouns, how to use clap, claps pronouns, how to use air, new, news, snowman, fact, facts pronouns. I mean, it just goes on. And I've seen enough of these to understand that she's somehow being serious. How to use moss pronouns, how to use pops, ver, humans, etc. So obviously she's not being entirely serious, but she's being kind of serious, and she does expect us to learn entirely new grammar as per an individual basis. And that is one of the things that is recurring all the time with Gen Z, is that they need to find something that makes them individual. Now, even better will be if it's something that makes them a victim or part of an oppressed minority, because of the virtuous victim kind of mentality that we have in the oppression Olympics. But that's a topic for a whole other video. And pronouns in general are a totally fascinating phenomena. But notice we're not even talking about pronouns. We're not even talking about choosing a particular gender here. We're talking about making up entirely new grammar to define myself, right? So it's that ultra individualized, customized, personal, individualistic culture that we're seeing within this identity crisis. And this does remind me a little bit of kind of maybe goth or punk rock aesthetics, where often it's about the aesthetics themselves, just the way that I look being entirely unique. No one else is going to look anything like me. But it's also about no one else having the same intersection of diagnoses that I have. I must have a special pronoun. I must have a special diagnosis. I must have a special sexual orientation that doesn't exist yet, a special gender identity, special neopronouns, and even special diagnoses. So let's take a look at that, for example.
I can feel it coming on. Guess the player.
Hi, I'm B, and we have dissociative identity disorder. There are 20 personalities in this body, and we're very switchy right now, so I figured I would make a TikTok just to see who wants to come say hi. Oh, I'm 19, by the way. Do I really have to do this? Hi. I'm Chaos. I'm 23. Wow. Let me just fix that. Nope, we're not fixing it. Okay, hi, I'm Ben. I am 24. Hi, I'm Aries. I'm 32.
Okay, so DID, or dissociative disorder, multiple personality disorder, these are serious psychiatric conditions and they're exceedingly rare. But somehow in Gen Z, there's a very high percentage of them on TikTok. And that's something that you have to notice, is that all of the identities have to have some kind of aesthetic representation. Part of the very reason that I need a special identity is so that I can go on TikTok and make TikToks about how I feel and about how different and strange and interesting I am, and gain likes and clicks and comments and social validation through the algorithm. And so this becomes a very deep, dark web of overdiagnosis, of misdiagnosis, of self-diagnosis, of over-attachment to all sorts of diagnostic labels. Like, of course, there are children who have neurodivergence or ADHD or even dissociative disorder, as rare as that might be. But the idea that they would go on TikTok and make content out of it and use it for content calls into question the validity, or really the realism or the believability of some of these self-diagnoses. And because it just comes off as the same flavor as someone who has a particular aesthetic, is a furry, is a kimimimimi, Etherean, or cottagecore, or dark academia, or an e-girl, or any of these subcategories that isolate people into ever narrowing labels and categorizations, it becomes more of an identity crisis than anything else. Now, you might think that this is all just good fun. This is just what young people do. This is just experimentation. This is just normal, rebellion of the teen and young adult years. Then I think that's true for a large portion of it. But there are sides of it that become really dark, fetishistic, cultish, and many of these social contagions become self-harming mechanisms. Gender ideology is a good example. All of the body positivity / body self-harm, like the eating disorder subcultures, these are cultures that can actually lead to self-mutilation, to self-sterilization, to all sorts of irreversible damage down the line. So many of these identities might just be, okay, I'm going to dress up in a clown costume, but many of them become socially destructive and physically and mentally destructive down the line. So what do we do instead? Well, number one, I want you to tell your child to touch grass. I take a really strong stance on later and less when it comes to screens. I think that watching a movie with a family is fine, but scrolling through TikTok is damaging. Scrolling through Instagram is dangerous. I mentioned this in my video about raising feminine girls, but these types of social contagions are much worse for girls than they are for boys. And you'll note that the vast majority of the content that I shared here and that I find on TikTok is made by girls. They're very busy with their image, with their performance, with ratings and reviews, with getting social validation and recognition. And what they need is to get that in real life. We'll talk about that soon. But before they can get that in real life, they just need to not be on the devices. You need to understand what's actually going on these devices. As a parent, if you don't have parental controls, if you're letting them use social media unchecked, this is the type of content that they're watching and they are being mesmerized by it. It seems fantastical and exciting. Oh, I wonder what diagnosis I might have. I wonder what gender identity I might have. I wonder what interesting new sexual orientation I could explore. I wonder what aesthetic I should morph into. I wonder if I have that issue. And that type of question, that very strong relational drive, especially girls have to fit in, to be part of a group, to be part of a club. We all want to connect, is exacerbated and put on steroids through dopamine-run algorithms online. And that's why they need to touch grass. Touch grass is Gen Z speak for get off the internet. Many, if not all, of these issues are issues of the terminally online. People who are pathological users of internet, social media are going to find themselves really susceptible to this kind of identity crisis. So just get off the internet. One of the things we do in our family is we observe a tech Sabbath. We take 25 hours off every single weekend. We are with community, we are with friends, we are with each other. We make eye contact, we do not use the screen, and we play board games and we read books and we go on walks. And these are the types of things that our kids need. So just get her off of there, get him off of there, go to a gymnastics class, go on a hike, play with a dog, do something that isn't the internet. And maybe then you can avoid these identity crises that are going to be suggested and offered and marketed to you through online influencers. Number two is accept your immutable characteristics and work on your character development. Much of this kind of Gen Z identity crisis, especially when it comes to gender, is all about immutable characteristics. People feel guilty for being white, or people feel kind of just boring for being heteronormative, or people feel like they are oppressive because they're heterosexual or because they're cisgendered. And if none of these terms mean anything to you, then good for you. But the idea is basically that they don't want to be perceived as normal. They need to have some kind of victim identity, some kind of subgroup, some kind of oppressed culture to be part of, to make themselves unique, to make themselves interesting. And I think that all of this leads to a very superficial, fetishistic, kinky, really echo chambery level of identity, where it's all just about the look, just about the words that I make people use through my outrage and threats, and just about the aesthetic. They say it. It's an aesthetic. It's a vibe. Now, aesthetics and vibes are all well and good, and I like aesthetics. I like different, vibes in my own home and my own look. But the fact is that real identity comes from your character development. It comes not just from your immutable characteristics, which are by definition immutable. Over-identifying or making big hoo-ha about your sex or your race or your height or your nationality or your birth order is a moot point. It's a waste of time and energy because these things are not changeable. These things are just facts about you. They're just how you arrived, that how God made you, that how the universe produced you, that how evolution made you, whatever you want to say, it just is. And much of these identities are trying to kind of fight with biology or with reality, are trying to impose a mental map of a different reality onto a physical map of existing reality. And that is, I think, a recipe for distress. It's a recipe for body dysmorphia, for gender dysphoria, for all the disconnects between the brain and reality. right? Both body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria are all about not accepting ourselves as we are. If a girl looks in the mirror and thinks, I am so fat, I am so overweight, I can't accept myself as I am, and goes on a journey of self-harm through eating disorders, we don't know exactly where that comes from, but part of what might agitate that and egg that on is being fed a superficial, aesthetic-driven culture where your identity is all about what you look like and where you can think things into existence. You can demand things into existence. You can just say it and then it's true. And the fact is that it's going to lead her down a path of self-harm in the real world. Whereas if we were to just help children to accept that how they are, how they were born is actually the least interesting thing about them. What's the most interesting thing about them is their character development. And that is actually mutable, is actually changeable and moldable, and is something you can actually do something about. You can decide what kind of emotional regulation you have, what kind of interest and curiosity you have, what kind of values you live by, what kind of vision you have for the future, how you treat others, what interests and curiosities you are driven by. That is your character. That is your personality. For many of these people, they're simply lacking personality. They don't have substantive character, or at least they don't think they do. And so they are attaching to superficial aesthetic-driven labels in order to fill the place of real core identity, which is much more internal. Yes, your identity is also about where you were born, how old you are, and that kind of thing. But you're seeing in these videos people who are even not only fighting with the realities of biological sex, but also fighting with the realities of chronological time. Like when I switch my personality, I'm now 23. Or of biological species. Like when I switch my personality, I'm now a fox. That points to me to an idea that is rooted within them that just aesthetics are the most important thing, and that I can control aesthetics or how people perceive me by demanding that they perceive me a certain way, right? We see this all the time, the demand that people use specific pronouns, see me in a certain way, admit me to certain clubs, ignore certain immutable characteristics about me, like, for example, that I am a human, and accept my idea of myself, my self-ID. This goes back to what I was saying about the difference between identity in the 80s and identity now, where identity in the 80s was based on other people's observation of you. It was kind of a social contract that was negotiated in relationship to other people. If other people perceived me as a nerd, they would label me as such, and I might identify or not with that label, but I was just a nerd. Right? And for better or worse, at least it was based on something that other people perceived about me versus what I proclaim and decide and imagine and even invent about myself. So rather than inventing external, aesthetic, superficial identities, let's encourage our children to invent, right? To work on, to create, to come up with internal identities. Who are you? What do you stand for? Who are you going to help in this world? Work on your character, work on your resilience, work on your confidence, work on your capacity, on your competence, on your ability to withstand stress, on your ability to be a pillar of strength for others, on your ability to overcome challenges, on your ability to learn and grow intellectually. Those are the types of things that you actually can change about yourself and actually form a lot more of your identity than which dress you happened to put on that morning or which neo-pronoun someone did or didn't use. Number 3, find a worthy hero and emulate their values and their virtues. In today's day and age, we're very obsessed with external representation. Like, are there people who look like me? If I don't see a woman in this industry, then it's not open to me. If I don't see a person of color in this industry, then it means that I'm not represented. If there's no one my age or from my religion or from my nationality or ethnicity or whatever, then I'm somehow not part of it. But the truth is that we should be developing heroes and looking for representation of values, virtues, of vision that we connect with. Because as humans, we have the ability to connect and to be inspired and to aspire to be like humans that look nothing like us. Many of my heroes are not women. Many of my heroes are not Jewish, do not have the same skin color as me, do not even live in the same time period as me, and certainly don't have the same nationality or the same lifestyle or the same socioeconomic status as me. Children who are siloed into ever smaller echo chambers where everyone just reaffirms and reaffirms everything that they already think and reinforces these very siloed off identities are missing out on the great, wonderful, creative aspiration of humanity, which is that we get to be inspired by stories, by others, by heroes. The very idea of identity formation is built on the idea that I look up to someone and I try to emulate them. I strive towards those goals. But today, we're very squeamish about telling our children what to aspire to. We don't want to judge. We don't want to sound like this lifestyle is a better choice than another. We don't want to make any moral calls whatsoever. We don't want to suggest that this person should be a hero in their eyes. I think that's a big mistake. I think children need something to aspire to, and it can't be just the other guy who likes wearing a tail and ears. It can't be just that I now have my own special neo-pronouns and I'll go on a crusade to berate anyone who doesn't follow by them. It can't be based on outrage or on aesthetics or on superficial, ever-changing, fluid identities. It has to be based on something more substantive, on something that really offers them a path towards meaning in their life, on something that helps them build in real life, touch grass relationships that are not on the internet, in something that builds up virtues like bravery, like resilience, like telling the truth, like being well informed and well educated, like being loyal or passionate, like working hard. I think it has to be based on merit. We need to look at heroes based on their merits. What did they do? Why would I tell my children to look up to men like Winston Churchill or to Martin Luther King? Because they embody virtues and values that I believe in, that I believe will forge a path forward for my children that I want them to identify with. A path that I think is good, that is right, that is moral, that is worthy, that is superior to other paths. I think their bravery, their ability to stand up to bad actors, their ability to state their case, all of these different things are good role models for my children. So for you, it might not be Churchill or Martin Luther King, but who is it for you? Think about the people who are heroes for you, and not just because they look like you, but because they actually embody a value that we want to aspire to. Number 4, build real life culture and community. So much of what's going on online is because children are so disconnected from real life relationships, and nothing can replace that. I'm grateful to live in a time of the internet. It's the only way I get to speak to my beloved grandmother who lives in a different continent. It's the only way I get to speak to my sister. And it's the way that I get a ton of inspiration from many heroes online who are teaching me and elevating my mind and spirit every single day. But it can never replace in-person relationships. Our children need to end their main character syndrome where they think that they are living in this, fake world where it's all about, let me share my feelings with you. Let me share how I feel about my various identities with you. Let me share my pronouns and neo-pronouns with you. Let me share my coming out as this or that orientation with you. It's all about them, their preferences, their aesthetics, their vibes, their labels, their hashtags. In a real community, it's about giving to others. If you're always selfish and obsessed and outraged and talking about your looks and your thoughts and how you identify and all your various labels, like if you behave like Cody over there in real life, hi, I'm Cody, and these are all the labels that you need to know about me, then society is going to push back on that. It's going to say, well, settle down there for a minute. This isn't how we interact. That's not normal. That's not like a healthy relationship building type of behavior. It's not pro-social. So to end this main character syndrome and to end this identity crisis, we need to get Gen Z and our children to think about others a little bit more than they think about themselves. There are 2 opposites to this Gen Z identity crisis. The first opposite is to not be in crisis. It's to simply accept who you are, understand, okay, yep, these are all my immutable characteristics, and I'm going to work on developing a character and a personality and values and virtues that are based on something that I find idealistic and heroic. That's good to have a positive focus and a positive definition of my identity. But the second opposite to it is just not thinking about yourself all that much at all. Not making yourself the main focus of your life, but saying, okay, this is who I am, and now I can move forward and live a life worth living, make good choices, be a pillar in my community, be a fantastic partner to my partner and parent to my children, be a great daughter or sister or teacher or whatever it is that you are. It's about developing an identity that's actually based on my relationship with others and on everything I have to give. Focusing on giving in real life community, like baking cookies for the neighbor who just moved in, cooking a meal for the woman who just gave birth in my community, inviting a friend over when they haven't been over for a while, or checking in on a kid who called in sick today in school is how we teach our children to be more than just a hashtag, Did you agree with this video? Did you disagree vehemently? I would love to hear either way. Let me know in the comments below. What are the examples that you've seen in your real life interacting with young adults? Are they in identity crisis? Do you see this happening offline as well as online? Are you worried about these types of trends for your own children? Do you too limit screen time and limit access to social media? If not, why not? Let's start a conversation in the comments below. Meanwhile, keep on living that hifam life, and I'll see you in the next video.